Right, so thank you so much for having me here today. So my name is Kin, and I'm the founder of Kasatria. Our team actually has the privilege of representing Google as their only premium partner in Malaysia. So basically, the next few minutes I'll be sharing with you how we can actually take action based on data and leverage AI to ensure that your sales funnel is effectively used. So, okay, how many of you have heard of this platform called Google Analytics? Can I have a show of hands? Okay, brilliant. How many of you actually use it in your company? Okay, brilliant. So I probably won't talk too much about Google Analytics then, but in a nutshell, so what we actually paid to do revolves around a journey. So the first step is where, where's my mouse? Okay, if you can see that green part over there, I'm actually paid hundreds of thousands of dollars by brands to capture information on their behalf, okay? So this means that I'm able to describe what has transpired, okay? So in marketing, what people typically want to know is what seems to suck when executed and what seems to be outperforming. So in an ideal situation, all of the bad stuff we try to avoid, and all of the good stuff we want to be able to replicate, turn it into a best practice, okay? So most brands would say that, well, if you just generate reports for me, better than nothing, you know, but I'm a progressive brand, you know. If you can analyze what has transpired in the past, I need you to do more. I need you to be able to tell me what you think will happen next. So this means that we move on to the blue section, which is where we attempt to predict what would transpire based on past activities. Then I have really, really ambitious customers, and they'll say things like this. Well, if you've already gone all the way to tell me what's going to happen next, you should share with me options I can consider to identify the risks and the opportunities I need to take advantage of so that I can make more money, okay? So for those kind of brands, most of the time our duty is to demonstrate an uplift so that they're able to share something with their boss and say, yes, this idea was brilliant, okay? And as they start climbing up the corporate ladder, we often get a request like this. You know what, bro, I know we've been doing quite well, but I've got better things to do. You know, I want to go home and spend more time with my family. Can we actually automate this? And this is where we actually turn into AI, okay? Because best practices that a human is able to execute, typically you also want to allow the machine to do this so that you can do this 24/7, 365 days a year. And the next few minutes, I'll be sharing with you how you can actually do this. So, maybe I'll just run through a few quick examples. So, for one of the brands that we're working with, it's a company called Astro. They are the largest media company based in Malaysia. We were actually able to exhibit an increase in consideration by more than 100%. So the premise was actually very straightforward. Based on the behavior captured by their readers, we were actually able to predict the sport they preferred. So for example, let's say in Australia, I think rugby is quite popular, okay? So let's just assume that based on all the things that you're reading, we know that you prefer rugby. And we seem to be able to understand that you have a following for this team called the Roosters, okay? So in an ideal situation, I need to start sharing with you articles and activities that resonate to increase your likelihood of you engaging. And we do this autonomously so that we are able to raise the bar for their clients. But fact of the matter is, their customers are not the readers. Their customers are brands who pay for advertising. No brand cares how much is being spent on your article. What they care about is that if I paid you some money, I want to be able to generate a sale. So to facilitate this, we actually started integrating with e-commerce platforms that had goods that were related to apparel, rugby apparel, that came from the Roosters. And when we started doing this, the likelihood of the sale occurring literally doubled. Okay? So it's a very, very simple premise of how we can actually use AI to do this. And then this is recently done for an airline. We were able to exhibit a 700% uplift in something called return on ad spend. So let me just explain how return on ad spend is calculated. So obviously there's a cost when you run a campaign. Okay? So that's what we call expenditure. And then fundamentally, the objective of a campaign can be quite varied, but most people are interested in closing a sale. So return on ad spend is the ratio between how much was spent versus how much you sold. So a return on ad spend of 100% meant that for every Australian dollar that you spent, you got $1 back. Okay? So fundamentally, what we did was very straightforward. Using AI, we were able to understand their preferred destination, their preferred budget, and who was intending to travel with them. And when we were able to do this, we were able to increase their sales by more than 7x. Think of it this way. For every dollar that you spent, you now got $7 back. And this is amazing. And I will share with you how we go about doing this. So right, in a nutshell, when we work for people like Google, Google actually wants you to ask 3 very simple questions. Number 1, based on the kind of people that you're attracting to your website, to your app, what kind of problems do you think they face? And number 2, based on the kind of problems that they face, what do you think are the products and solutions that you have that can address their concerns? Okay? And more importantly, based on the kind of people that you're attracting, which product and which customer seems to be contributing to your bottom line? So the moment you can answer these kind of questions, the way you choose to interact with your customers will start to change. Okay? So let me just share with you a very quick example. So this is AirAsia. It's a low-cost carrier, one of the more popular airlines in my country. So in the past, when 1 million people came to their site, 1 million people would see the exact same thing. But now, through the technologies that we are intending to deploy with them, we're actually now able to identify profiles in real time. So let's just assume that this is an expatriate couple. They're interested in culture and outdoors. We will crunch with statistical certainty to deliver the most suitable narrative to ensure that the sale occurs. If we now notice that based on their behavior, the profile has changed. It now seems as though it's a family unit with children. And let's say through machine learning, while we may assess that they share similar characteristics, for example, their love for outdoors, it seems as though this profile has a clearer affinity for cute furry animals. Okay, fair enough. Our duty is to put the best foot forward for the brand to make sure that the sale occurs. Okay? And this is done billions of times per second. And this is how you influence a sale. So the question that is probably popping on everyone's mind, so how does this really work? So I think there's been many versions of the conversion funnel shown earlier. I'll just share a very, very simple anecdote. Let's assume that I'm a new migrant to Australia, okay? So back where I come from, alligator burgers seem to be the rage, okay? So here I am, I have a booth, okay? And I'm trying to sell alligator burgers. So let's say in one day, only 100 people walk past my little shack. So this means that my reach is 100, okay? Out of that 100 people, let's say only 20 of them actually like alligator burgers. So this means that my relevance is 20%, okay? And out of that 20, let's say only 5 decided to buy from me. This means that my conversion rate is 5%. So traditionally, people in the advertising agencies have always tried to game the system. And they always do this on what we call the upper funnel. So what does this really mean? If yesterday there was only 100 people walking past my alligator shack, okay, let's say by working with our bro Dish, you know, after working with him, he brings by 500 people walking past, okay? So if all things were the same, with a relevance of 20%, I would now have 100 people who may consider enjoying an alligator burger with a conversion rate of 5%. This means earlier, I only had 5 people buying, but now I'll potentially have about 25 people buying. So this is typically what was done in the past. But after a while, you realize that if I've already touched everyone in the neighborhood, what else can I do? Okay, so this is where we move into the second phase, which is what we call relevance. What if I told you that out of the 100 people who walk past, actually 80% preferred beef? Okay, so if I chose not to do anything, well, let's just have a very nice chat and shake hands on it. But if you chose to take action, I will intentionally change my marketing mix to reflect demand. And this is basically the fundamentals. For those of you who have studied marketing before, you always hear about 2 terms, supply and demand. Demand reflecting the intention to buy, and supply is everything that a brand has to offer. Okay? When we start matching these two variables together, we are effectively introducing something called a sale. Okay? And this is what we want to be able to do effectively. So right, so how do we go about doing this? So let me introduce to you a new field of science. It was just recently coined 2 or 3 years ago. It's something called Kinesics. Okay? So fundamentally, it revolves around a term that I think many of us are quite familiar with. It is the study of how human behavior can be interpreted towards their next action. Okay? If I turn this into very human terms, most of us know this as body language. Okay? So when someone nods, when someone holds their hand very closely to their chest, all these are indicators of different types of intention. So the difference here is we harness digital body language, okay, to reflect the intention of someone buying without them having to tell you. So how do we do this? So basically, each time someone chooses to interact with your website or your app, they leave fingerprints behind. So what happens is we introduce something called a data enrichment process. So most people who believe in digitization, the first thing that they will do is invest in a website or an app. And most of these solutions require you to deploy something called a content management system. Okay? So there's a cute guy in your office or a cute girl who is actively entering stuff into a platform that decides to render what you see on the screen. You're already forcing them to enter it in a particular way. So what happens is, when we expose all of these data points to the analytics platform, we change the game. For example, if you are playing with the origin and destination, I know where you are intending to fly out from, and I know where you intend to go. The moment you set the dates, I know how long you intend to spend. The moment you set things like 2 adults and 2 children, I can probably guess that it's a family already. And based on this, what happens is we are able to capture all of this behavior using something called Google Analytics, which I think more than half of you already use. And this is already available in your free version, mind you. So what happens here is this. This is what we call your clickstream. I know it's a bit hard to see on the screen, but fundamentally, when the person actually landed on your site, we are actually able to understand what he was doing. So this guy, he was checking through an itinerary to go to Japan, to go to Korea and Vietnam. Then after that, he decided to check out the promotions area because he felt that maybe he could get a better deal. When we're able to plot behavior over time, we have effectively built something called a customer journey. And traditionally, some of you may have an analyst team in your organization. And this is typically what they will end up doing. So they will actually build something called a customer profile. For example, this gentleman, Jack, over here, based on his, okay, I'm a bit chubby, sorry. Okay, so based on his profile, he's interested in, you guys can still hear me, right? Okay, so he's interested in warm weather conditions, near a body of water, and he's clearly looking for a romantic interlude, okay? So once we do machine learning, we realize that this guy is a cheapskate. He's trying to find the cheapest possible permutation to impress his newfound companion. Okay, and can I borrow? Sure. Okay, sorry, a bit chubby. Okay, and although he thinks his companion is quite attractive, when asking for leave with his boss clearly disagrees, and this is why he could only get 2 or 3 days to blow for the holiday. So I'll just walk across. Maybe it's a bit easier to explain. So why are profiles important? Because this girl called Angel, she, on the other hand, is exhibiting a totally different behavior. She is planning to travel alone. No, she doesn't want to meet friends here, okay? And based on her itineraries, she's looking for a fine dining kind of excursion. And based on her time of travel, all of her locations are experiencing what we call winter conditions, okay? And once we do machine learning, we realize that her budget is easily 4 to 5 times that of Jack. She is what we call a high net worth customer. Jack, not only is he on a budget, he's going to be splitting his spend 2 ways, okay? And while Jack could only blow 2 or 3 days, she clearly intends to spend more than a week, okay? So by being able to differentiate intention, in the past, it might have taken perhaps 5 or 7 interactions before someone decided to buy. But if you knew this in advance and chose to play your cards accordingly, you might have been able to close this within 2 or 3 steps. This is what we call conversion optimization, okay? Oh, sorry. Right, so why do we bother doing this? Because fundamentally, someone who is looking to retreat into nature and someone who is looking to bond at the birthdays of their ancestors and someone who is planning to chill with their friends, they all want to see different things, okay? And if we are able to match what they prefer, you are definitely able to influence your bottom line effectively. So, once you start doing this, this is where we start getting very, very formal. Let's just assume that we are stalking this lady called Lisa, okay? Just an example, okay? So, based on her destination stream, we're actually able to assess that, let me see if this works. Okay, so it seems as though most of her itineraries are alluding to a location near a beach. Most of them are nearby a family-friendly attraction. And it seems as though there's a lot of outdoor activities nearby. And basically looking at the stuff that she's been observing, we're actually able to calculate how much she's willing to spend. Okay? It's the same thing like when you're looking for a car. You'll be flipping through many, many brochures. The ones which are too cheap, you will ignore. The ones which are too expensive, you'll probably drop. And then there'll be like 3 or 4 that you constantly look at. So this is the same principle. We actually do this billions of times per second so that we're able to obtain what we call statistical certainty. So once we start doing this, we need another model that represents supply. So for an airline, supply is defined as a route or a destination. So it's a combination of an origin and a destination. We usually onboard first-party data, for example, like approval ratings. Over here, this is revenue. We are actually already paid to track all the revenue for these brands. And if we connect to their supply chain, we actually know what's their profit margin like, okay? But if you observe, this is where the magic starts to happen. We actually are able to assess who are the people that seem to buy, okay? But more importantly, we want to be able to not only identify look-alike profiles, but we want to identify look-alike offerings. Why? Because for an airline, for example, if, let's say, as an Aussie, I know Bali is quite a popular destination, okay? Let's assume perfect day, perfect price, but unfortunately, the flight is sold out. In the past, most airlines would just say, oh, too bad. But if we took a step back, and if we were able to assess that, hey, it seems as though all this person wanted to do was to go to a beach, okay, ideally where it's warm and sunny without a typhoon, and he was willing to blow about 300 Aussie dollars a night. I actually have another 15 destinations that match that criteria, okay? And it would be a disservice for the brand to not show it to you. And this is what we want to be able to do. Make sure that we match all of these occurrences and ensure the odds are in your favor. So right, so the reason why this is important because of a new advancement. So I think about 2 or 3 weeks back, Google recently announced something called the Google Marketing Platform. How many of you are familiar with the term called double-click? Okay, some of you. Okay, brilliant. So double-click is an enterprise buy-side platform. And what they're trying to do throughout this consolidation is to illustrate the fact that the data that you capture actually has value if you choose to push it to the platforms that you intend to take action on, okay? So over here, this is something called Google Ads. It actually just used to be called Google AdWords, okay? This is a new one. So there's something called Display and Video 360. For those of you who are familiar with DoubleClick, this used to be called DoubleClick Bid Manager, okay? Then there's something called Ad Manager 360. So in my line of work, I work with a lot of publishers. And Ad Manager 360 is kind of like a content management system that allows you to define what kind of ads to show. And based on the ads that you're showing, you're actually compensated for it, okay? And there's something called Google Optimize. So this is where, I think in the example earlier, the one with AirAsia, This is how, by understanding what kind of audiences we are able to detect, we can then target and deliver unique experiences and prove that by doing this, we were able to demonstrate an uplift, okay? Oh, sorry. Right, so, okay, let me show you guys a demo, very simple one. Okay, so let's not talk about AI, let's just focus on data, okay? So this is a sample data set that I joined for a different customer. They're a mobile operator like Optus, okay? We've onboarded first-party information, things like CRM, billing, and we've also onboarded information captured on Google Analytics for behavior expressed on websites and apps. So now we can actually ask questions like this. Show me high net worth customers, and I'm going to qualify that as anyone who spent more than $100 a month, roughly lah. My hand is a bit not so sensitive on this thing. I can now sort them based on the kind of services that they consume, and immediately I will have visibility, okay? So in the past, if I was part of the marketing team, I would usually make, let me just close the back, okay? I would usually make decisions based on something called intuition. It's a very polite way of saying it's an educated guess, okay? But based on this data, it seems as though there's a fair bit of interest in chatting services. So this means that I'm now empowered to do homework. I'll probably partner with people like WhatsApp, Viber, or even WeChat to make sure that when someone comes over to my booth, they see something that they like so that we can kickstart the discussion on why you need to upgrade your data plan, okay? So let's say someone like Samsung walks over, he says something like this. Bro, excellent event. You know what? I'm going to be launching a new device called the Samsung Note 11. And I can foresee this device selling across all of your booths really, really well. So clearly this guy is fishing for a joint venture. And most of these relationships codified in a contract, okay? So just before he signs, his boss calls him all the way from Korea. And he says, bro, I've noticed you've been very hardworking of late. Well, thank you, boss. But before we sign, can you just ask the new partner a simple question? Sure, boss. What should I ask? Well, based on their existing customer base, whom amongst their clientele do you think may actually want to consider switching to a Samsung device? So his boss was asking what we call a qualifying question. In the past, if you throw this question back to the mobile operator, they actually find it quite hard and difficult to answer this. But because we are now in the game, what happens is this. Every time a phone enters the network, it will broadcast a special number called an IMEI number. And this IMEI number allows you to identify the brand, the make, and the model. So what does this mean? It means that in real time, I can identify what kind of phones you're using on the Optus network. Let's just focus only on people who own Android devices, because these people have a higher propensity to churn and switch. So as we set different criteria, we notice that the visibility has changed. So earlier, we have interest in chat, but now it seems as though there's a fair bit of interest in music. And this is why this player is now partnering with people like Spotify, and even rekindling relationships with people like Universal and Warner to cater to this interest. So let's say now the last provider is a dating app player. He waltzes into the room and he says, bro, you know what? I'm the leader in the market. I charge everyone. But I kind of like your event. I'm actually willing to give it for free. Wow, for free? So where do we sign, bro? Wait, hold your horses. Actually, we are only willing to give it for free to the ladies. Oh, okay. That's odd. May I ask why? Well, as we mentioned earlier, we're an international player. And what we've observed in other markets is that when the ladies are given access for free, the gentlemen are more than willing to pay. And since we are a for-profit company, obviously we need to squeeze blood out of the rock. Okay, fair enough. Let's just check it out. So how many ladies do you have on the list? Again, as we set different criteria, the visibility changes. So earlier, we have interest in chat. Then we have interest in music. But now it seems as though there's a fair bit of interest in religion. So this is not a data set from Optus, obviously. It comes from my country. And most of the ladies there are actually Muslim. Okay? So what do? We probably need to partner with people who offer things like mosque finders, or even things like Sharia-compliant boyfriends. Okay? So, I'm not kidding. It's actually a very highly desirable activity which generates a lot of revenue for brands who choose to participate. So what we're actually trying to do here is a question and answer process that a consultant is typically able to do. Okay, when you start asking the right questions, you get the right kind of response, okay? The problem that most people in the industry has faced is the fact that they have no access to this data. And this is something that we'd like to change together with the people that we work with. So a very common question that some people will ask is this. Well, you've put them into nice buckets. Yeah? Some people are interested in chat, some people are interested in religion. But just because I'm a chatty person doesn't mean that I don't have a strong faith. Okay? I say that's a fair thing to say. And this is why we actually allow you to zoom in to individuals. We know who you are, what they've bought, and what they've recently expressed interest in. When we are actually able to expose these variables in real time, this is how we fuel the narrative of how we are able to influence the sale. Because the honest to God fact is, for brands, the Holy Grail has always been about this thing called building a relationship. But the fact of the matter is, each time someone pays, they forget all about you and treat you like a stranger again. And this is, I think, is a reality that needs to be addressed if branding needs to move forward.